I was going to say, this is the one slide, so if you're expecting 37 different slides of like amazing stats, that's not us.
This is it.
I was fortunate enough to work at Google and MCI for 20 years with Vint Cerf. And Vint had a saying, power corrupts and PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. So this is going to be just a conversation really between Doc and myself about the internet and safety and some of the things we'd like to see happening in the future, sort of scenario planning, and then hopefully invite you all into the conversation as well.
And by the way, I handcrafted that slide backstage, so just one. So it's not an absolute corruption.
Great job.
So far.
So I think the starting question was going to be for Doc, right? What is the internet, Doc?
So it's kind of like what if gravity was safe, right? I mean, because asking how do you make the internet safe is sort of like how do you make the air safe for birds, or how do you make gravity safe for anything? The internet is elemental. The internet it's not the phone company, it's not cable companies, it's not universities, it's not providers or carriers or anything like that. The internet's an agreement among networks. An agreement to move data, or copy data, really. You don't even move it. You copy data between endpoints. It's an inherently end-to-end thing. And all of us are ends on that. And this is a change. It's a radical thing, probably on the order of stone tools or print or many other completely civilization-changing technologies in the world right now, and it's only been around since like 1995 in its current form. So it's really early. We're still in early days of the internet. It's a genie that's not going back in the bottle. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's not safe right now, just like gravity's not safe.
So who's going to make it safe? If it's not safe right now, how do we get from here to there?
People say that's a good question.
What's the root of the problem?
They don't have the answer.
Right. Yeah.
I think what makes it safe is we civilize it. We haven't civilized it yet. It's like, hey, we found stone things. We can beat each other's heads in with it, right? I mean, we're almost at that stage of it. There's a principle, which is that with any new technology, what can be done will be done, right? Until we figure out what's wrong with it. We did that with nuclear power. Like, let's blow up a city. No, better not do that again, right? There's a moment that we have where we realize that. And at the moment we realize that the internet's not safe and we can blame it on a lot of things, but the simple matter is it's way too easy to spy on people. And we've institutionalized that. We made it really, really easy to spy on people because we're exposed. Well, we don't have privacy technologies. In the physical world, we have clothing and shelter. Everybody here is wearing privacy tech right now. We worked this out 10, 20,000 years ago. We haven't worked it out online yet. We don't have personal privacy tech. And consenting to something online that says we can spy on you is not a way to get privacy. Nobody else is going to give it to us. We need our own privacy tech.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I was going to put my former Googler hat on, or take my Google hat off, depending how you think about it. So I think going back to the time I was with the company and before that, there are really 3 or 4 sort of dynamics that I think have gotten us to where we are in terms of this lack of safety. I would say lack of trust, lack of accountability. And it's basically a number of different dynamics that moving forward have really brought us to this point. So the first one is net effects, right? We have externalities, scale, and scope. We have had initially a few large companies who became much larger because everybody wanted to be on them. Everybody wanted to use Google Search. Everybody wanted to be on Facebook because their friends were on Facebook. That makes those networks grow on an exponential basis in some cases. The second part of that is what I call web inputs, which is you and me. It's data. It's data that we are either supplying or having surreptitiously taken from us, depending on your viewpoint. But then also it's the generated content that we then create for these platform companies. And so we're giving them both the inputs and the outputs that they're using then to generate their businesses. The third piece is the dynamics of a platform, right? And we've just started as I think in the last 20 years or so, economists have really come to understand why a platform uniquely has power and advantages that the old supply pipeline notion just doesn't match, right? And then the fourth is what author Tim O'Reilly, wrote the book WTF, has talked about. He calls it the Wall Street algorithm. Yeah. And that basically is what's powering a lot of this, and that's all comes down to the desire of having as many clicks as possible, as many impressions as possible. It's the attention economy, not the intention economy, which is your your concept, but trying to keep people engaged online. And as we've seen the past couple of years, unfortunately, a lot of that is driven by emotion. So it's joy, but it's also anger, fear, getting wrapped up in conversations online, which drives more engagement, which makes more money for the platform companies, but then also creates pernicious societal issues, which we're still grappling with. So I think those are roughly the four things that I can see over the last 10 or 20 years that have taken us to this point where we're asking why the net is not safe enough, why there's not enough trustworthiness, for example, or enough accountability. But it also suggests that these are path dependencies. This was a unique moment back in 2002 or so when Google originally figured out, hey, we can do ads plus search. And moving forward, Facebook adopted it, then Amazon and many others. So this is all something that has happened very new in the unfolding of this technology. And I would submit there's ample room for us to say, you know what, we want to shift course a little bit and do something different.
Yeah, we're at a moment now where a number of things that like I said, what can be done with tech will be done. And the easy thing for us to do, because we're still in the industrial age, is let's create another industrial giant. And that came naturally, I think. And that's one reason why, and if you use tech really well, which Google did, you can get these industrial giants. But what we don't have yet, and what we need to work on, the thing that if we do it right a year from now, it'll be one of the great trends that are on the list of 10 or 12 trends that Peter talks about at the beginning of the show, is going to be individual empowerment. The term agency has come into common usage just in the last couple of years. We don't have it. We have some of it online, but if we're only getting it from Apple or from Google or from Facebook or something, that's not real personal agency. You have full agency when you're riding a bicycle, when you put your clothes on in the morning. You don't get putting clothes on as a service. You don't get bicycle as a service. You don't get that because somebody's making money for nothing off of your yielding data doing that. That's a really broken model that I think has played out about as far as it can go. An interesting thing in the history of Google that Richard probably knows better than anybody, he probably has more secrets about Google than anybody that he's not going to tell.
At the bar later.
Yeah, and this isn't just about Google. This is about why did ad blocking take off? Ad blocking has been around since 2004. It really took off in about 2013. What happened in 2013 that made ad blocking take off? And if you look back at Google Trends and you look at ad blocking and you look at something called retargeting, you'll notice that they completely track each other. There's a high degree of correlation between them. And that correlation is high because people could see with retargeting, that's where you look at shoes and you see shoe ads in the next 10 places you go to. The Onion had a great headline, which is woman stalked across 10 websites by an obsessed shoe advertisement, right? You have that kind of effect. Well, once that started to happen, people started to block ads. Blocking ads had a lot to do with tracking. It wasn't just, I don't like ads, because people put up with ads before. They don't like the personalized kind that creeps them out. And there was a causality there that turned people off, and people started getting creeped out. And the problem is, stop just running ad blockers, that's not enough. We need true agency here. We really need to be in charge of our lives online. There are tools we don't have, just like we don't have privacy tools, that give us that agency online. So, related to that, I'd just like to ask people, who here, by the way, we can't see any of you with the lights on us, just so you know. There might as well be nobody here for us. We're just pretending to have eye
Avatars,
contact.
yeah.
I can make white chair contact in the front row, but beyond that I can't. But who here is not a customer? Who here has not ever spent money? None of you are standing up or even want to. That is a power that we have in the marketplace. How do we empower ourselves as customers to have scale? And it's scale really that matters. So I'd like to hear from Richard, because he's working on a project now called GliaNet that addresses some of the issue.
Yeah, so the notion is, how do we move from a world of users to a world of clients? And I think of this in part as, right now we have a transactional web where we are largely the objects of what Hal Varian, who's the current economist at Google, calls data extraction and analysis about people, right? So, interesting turn of phrase, data extraction and analysis of people who are users. The actual subjects of these relationships and the platforms is, of course, on the other side. It's the ad brokers, and merchandisers and aggregators, et cetera. And so my thinking the last year, roughly, when I've been with Mozilla, is how do we change that dynamic so the platform actually is serving me? I am not just no longer just a user as part of a transaction. I am actually a client of an entity that willingly opts into a fiduciary relationship of loyalty to me. And so it changes from basically transactional to relational. And that's the way the markets, frankly, for hundreds of years, operating in various degrees of success, but over time, that's the way markets started. That's what Adam Smith really had in mind. You have willing buyers, willing sellers, and you have intermediaries who can be in between, like the agoras and markets of ancient times. And now the platforms have taken that over, but the problem is, in my view, they've skewed the platform approach. The dynamics are all sort of in one direction. So GliaNet is about how do you bring in new trusted intermediaries to the web to act on our behalf, right, to help work with us to then amass these amazing technologies, some of which are here at Singularity. But the notion is there's an expectation that we'll passively be receiving these technologies from some third parties, maybe a Google or a Facebook, for example. But my concept is, no, wait a minute, we should have that on our own. So one example is artificial intelligence, AI, right? We've heard a lot about that the past few days. Ray was very eloquent about that this morning. But the assumption is somebody else's AI is going to be sort of doing this for us. So when I put this implant in my head, it's coming from somebody, but it's not clear that they're actually serving my interests primarily and exclusively even. And so the GliaNet notion is I'll have an intermediary, or maybe a number of them, who operate under this fiduciary obligation of loyalty to me. So my best interests are their primary or sole interests. And so that includes, for example, a personalized AI. Right? We have institutional AIs today, right? We have what I call screens, scenes, and unseens. So the screens are obvious. It's the stuff we see every day interacting with algorithmic systems that are running advertising networks and search and social, et cetera. Scenes is stuff we're now seeing increasingly in our own homes, right? We've got devices there, Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, et cetera, helping us manage our homes, for example. And then the unseens are really the algorithms behind the scenes doing things in government and corporate bureaucracies, making decisions that have really, really major impacts on our lives. Did I get that job? Did I get that loan application? How long is my prison sentence? I mean, these are all very important things, and these systems increasingly are making these decisions and without really much or any input from sort of the rest of us. And so the notion is, why can't we have a personalized AI that serves us, again, exclusively, that interacts on a real-time basis with these AIs, and also helps us manage all of the computational overload, right? All of this stuff, again, is incredible, the technology, but for the average user who's not a cognoscenti or an early adopter, it's going to be an immense challenge to take this on. So if you have an intermediary who's there to help you, support you, and then you have things like personalized AIs, identity layers, local data, cloudlets that are localized for you, those are the kinds of things that then empower me and give us that agency that you're talking about, Doc, which I think is really going to be key for this to become a democratized technology world.
I mean, it's interesting that right now what we get from an Alexa or from the Google equivalent is the best we can get from companies that are basically self-interested. And they're third parties, most of which we've never heard of, that are also self-interested, and their self-interest is in selling us stuff, not necessarily in serving what we want to do in the world, what are our intentions as independent and individual human beings. The outfit that I started, Customer Commons, is a spin-off of Project VRM at the Berkman Center, and it has the completely audacious goal of being a membership organization of all the world's customers. Ideally, we might even work like the AARP is. You're 50 years old, you belong. You know, it'll be like that. But without harassing people about it, which would be a different thing. But the key part of this, the first thing that we're doing, is terms. In the same way, we're modeled on Creative Commons. Creative Commons also spun to some degree out of the Berkman Center about the turn of the millennium as a place where creative licenses could live, and you could point to them and say, that's my license, attribution only, or all rights reserved, or public domain, or whatever else it might be. In a similar way, what we're doing with Customer Commons is being the place where terms we can assert can live. We're living right now in a horrible world online that the GDPR in Europe made worse, and I guarantee the California law will make even worse, which is that all of a sudden we're reading these cookie notices for consent, as if the web is designed that way, that we always have to agree to other people's terms. We can turn that around. Here's my term. Go ahead and show me ads. Just make sure you're not tracking me off your site. Sign here. That's a contract. We can do that. We're signing contracts all the time that are not actionable. That's one that will relieve every website in the world that doesn't want to track us, and there are a lot of them, from any obligation toward the GDPR. And that's when we have agency. When we have agency, we can do things like, I want to change my address once with all the companies I'm dealing with. I want to be able to not only have the same terms with everybody, I want the same loyalty program. I mean, every loyalty program in the world is coercive. Oh yeah, carry around your CVS card, that you have to show along with your phone number. Huge cognitive overhead, huge operational overhead on the part of every store that carries it before you get the 6-foot receipt from CVS, for example. There's actually a guy who made a doorway out of hanging nothing but CVS receipts in there, like those columns of beads. It's completely backwards if we're always consenting, if we're always the second party. The internet is designed so we can be first parties. The internet is designed, the original founding protocol of the internet, which our friend Vint Cerf, that Richard worked for, designed is to make us equals. All of us should have full agency. We don't have it yet, and it better be an issue a year from now at this show.
Yeah, so one more comment, and then we can maybe take a question or two from the audience, and that's around consent. We're already concerned about consent online, right? That's already a challenge enough. But again, with the technology we're seeing increasingly AI and augmented reality, biometrics, drones, robots, all these things in the environment around us, where's the consent there? If we're walking down the street, walking into a bar, going to the movies, there's talk about governments, of course, in the city of San Francisco here, first major city in the US to ban facial recognition on the government side, but that doesn't affect the corporate side. So you can be in many situations increasingly where these things are happening around you and data is being siphoned from the environment, including from you. They can see your affect, your emotion, your gait, all these aspects of yourself, your personhood essentially, and yet that's all being taken from you. Where's the consent? The transparency is bad enough, the lack of, but where's the consent to that environment, and where's the recourse? How can you push back against and say, you know what, I'm not happy with you taking this photo of me as I'm going to this bar because I'm not sure why you're using it. I don't know what your legitimate purpose is. So this gets back to the notion of you should have AIs and other things that can help sort of put these zones around you of care and of loyalty and to keep out the bad stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way civilization works, we don't walk down a street in San Francisco wearing a name badge. We walk around here. It's a grace here to say, I'm Doc Searls, this is Richard Whitt. We have a thing that says so. That's nice. But when you go out on the street, that is weird. And yet that's kind of the way the industrial system is designed. Hey, look, we can know everything about these people. We're going to go ahead and do that because we can. We need ways to say no, and ways to say no in a very normative way. Just walk around with, and if you think about what it means to be human, part of being human is having short-term memory, forgetting within 7 seconds exactly what you just heard or saw. I mean, that's part of the way we work. We have Dunbar's number, which is, we remember about 120 names, at any given time. We're built to know a tribe, not to do LinkedIn, where we have 2,000 people and 3 a day sending us a note saying, hi, make me a friend. I mean, it's crazy to do that. But we have to fix that, and we have to fix it by starting with ourselves, not necessarily starting with a system that's meant to extract data from us.
Yep. So we have a few minutes left. I think there's a mic runner around someplace. So yes, folks in here, whoever they can.
Yeah, there's several here. There's one back there.
Hey, Alexander Hanfield. We know each other actually. One of the problems that I see as a data ethicist is terms like customers, terms like clients, terms like users. Commoditizes us, whereas actually I would like to see us all called people instead of customers, clients, or users. And in a situation where we are commoditized, how do you anticipate building a new future or transitioning the existing status quo to the point where we do have that agency, when the very companies who have a very strong vested interest in the money that they make from us not having agency are continuously lobbying against efforts to allow us to do that. So as a lobbyist in Brussels, the only privacy-registered lobbyist in Brussels, I should add, against 60,000 industry lobbyists all shouting against the things that we're trying to change to give us that agency. So we can all do things as individuals, obviously, but until we have a change in mindset by the industry itself and the way we do politics, it's very difficult to make that a reality. How do you anticipate we move forward and reach that reality?
Hey kids, let's build an ecosystem.
Yeah,
That's my idea. It's a very immodest one, but it's like if there's enough oomph behind companies and individuals and nonprofits, and maybe on the government side too, to take the technologies, a whole bunch of different business models, and work together, collaborate around something. So that's what the Glia.net idea is as a big tent to try to get folks who have a more or less similar view about a better future than what we currently face with the existing paradigm with the platform companies. That's one approach. I'm sure there are others, but it really is going to take something it's a combination of organic, sort of bottoms up, and then some cool like top-down stuff too. For example, GDPR, right? Right now, the platform companies are really the only game in town in terms of compliance because they have all the lawyers and they can sort of figure out the angles. Most ordinary companies don't have that. So if you take an approach that says GDPR actually doesn't mean anything because what we're doing as a model completely blows it out of the water, that could be attractive for folks to say, hey, I don't want those compliance risks and all that headache. Let me look at some other business models where I still get some benefits, I can still make some nice money, but I have a different relationship with my end user, customer, client, person, human being, self, whatever you want to call, then that can help change, that by itself can maybe change some of the thinking around what kind of businesses to run.
The complementarity here is what Richard's doing is institutionalizing the way that companies that really get what we're trying to do here, that really get individual agency, and there are really hundreds of them at this point, and institutionalizing them, making an ecosystem out of that. From my side, I was one of the ones that when Christine Lee said, who here is doing real disruption out of 10, and I raised my hand. Because the real disruption is going to come from each of us. And we need tools. We need tools that are personal. We need tools that are individual. Ways of saying, this is my internet of my things. These are my terms. And they come to business in ways that all of a sudden they realize, wait a minute, this is good for us. It's good for CVS that this customer and a whole lot of customers have a better way of expressing loyalty than we're busy coercing out of them and introducing all kinds of cognitive and operational overhead for ourselves as a giant cost. There are massive costs going on right now inside companies that can easily be eliminated if the customers coming at them are disrupting them in a really positive way. That's why I think the biggest disruption coming in the next 2, 3, 5 years is going to be customers having independence and their own empowerment with their own tools and their own ways of coming at companies that are really constructive. And the companies can't ignore that. Yep. We have 11 seconds left. Who's got a short question?
This probably is not a short,
Yeah.
This probably isn't a short question. So at the heart of this is folks understanding what actually they want to do, the individual, right? So I've been thinking about this problem for a couple years now. I work for a large media company that produces a lot of news, and our main enemy is the fake news. And so I've been trying to figure out how to create that relationship with those customers, and it's really complicated because
It can't be done.
it can't be done.
It can't be done. It can't be done from the inside. It's like, imagine if it was up to every company to invent a browser or to invent an internet. They can't. They just can't. That's why we need something that really comes from the customer side that we can institutionalize. I sat in a thing yesterday where, how can we be more customer-centric? Dude, you got to be customer-driven, and the customer needs a way to drive. We don't have it yet. We have to invent that. I mean, if you ask people 15 years ago, what kind of smartphone do you want? Well, they say, I want a BlackBerry or a Palm, And Nokia, I talked to a guy from Nokia back then, we've got everything planned out for the next 10 years. They know exactly what kind of phones you're going to need. And the iPhone comes along, the Android comes along, blows the entire thing up. And that was, we need inventions that mother the necessity. And that's going to be a hard one. But if it's done well, there'll be a few simple things that people are going to actually want and use.
Yeah.
So
I think our time is up, unfortunately.
I think they are. It says 0, so
Yes.
it probably is.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah.